and welcome to Ophidia. I am here today with another edition of the Questionnaire d'Ophidia. I don't know if you've seen the other ones, but I encourage you to go check them out. Today I am here with Tariq Patel. Tariq Patel, I'm sure if you're here on this Flesh and Blood channel, you know about him. Hello, Tariq. How are you?
I'm doing well. Hello. How are you? And how are you, French community? I think this is the first time I've been on a
I
European-based
think
podcast.
so.
So,
Yeah, I think so, and I'm really happy that you took time for us today. Um, if you don't know, Tariq is a man that's always in the in the conversation when we are talking about the best flesh and blood players in the world, and you proved it recently because you won the national championship in Canada just 1 year, I think, after winning Nats in the US.
yeah, you're absolutely right. So, yeah, I ended up winning U.S. Nationals, and probably my proudest achievement in any card game was I ended up winning the Canadian Nationals this year. So, big deal
Insane,
for me.
yeah, insane streak, and you've had a nice nice results at the Pro Tour too.
Yeah, Pro Tour jersey, I dropped out unfortunately, but the last one, I lost to Christian Huck, the round before his winning in. So,
Yeah,
easily could have been me in that dash top eight, but wasn't meant to be.
we saw you drafting live, and it was absolutely insane. I remember how I watched you you draft, and it was an absolute masterclass. It was so cool. So before we start, I'll let you introduce yourself in a few words. I always choose to let the interviewee introduce themselves because sometimes they say more about the interviewer. I could choose to introduce you and to say a bit more about you, but I'll let you do it. It's always interesting to know what you want the people to know, what you want the French community to know. So how would you introduce yourself? Maybe not as a player, but as a person. Who are you, Tariq Patel?
Bonjour, je m'appelle Tariq Patel.
Wow.
Je comprends un peu français and je parle un peu français. So that'll be the extent of my French speaking
Cool.
for this podcast. But yeah, I'm 31 years old. I was born and raised in Toronto, Ontario, which is a province in Canada. I am a medical doctor here in Canada, and I'm licensed in the States currently in Florida. So I just completed my 3-year residency down in Orlando. I was living in America for about a decade and just recently moved back up to Canada. I have two lovely dogs who just made their exit from my room,
Yeah, we saw them.
and and yeah, and I just moved back into my childhood home. So I haven't lived here for almost a decade since high school. You can kind of still see the posters up on the wall
Mm-hmm.
and little glimpse of what my personality was like as a teenager. But it's kind of turned into like a storage closet after the kids moved out. That's what kind of my parents did. So, but yeah, that's a little bit about my life in a short sentence.
Okay, cool. So I want to let's talk more about gaming, obviously, and about Flesh and Blood. There are infinite types of players. We got the romantics, the players, the poetic, who are there for the beauty of the game and the lore, and who remain faithful to certain archetypes. You have the instinctive ones who play in freestyle mode and just to have fun. You have the grinders, the tryharders who always try to play the best deck, whatever it is, and they are mostly there to win. You have the mathematicians or the cerebral ones who like to stay deep in the tank to mark their place, and they're there for the challenge mainly. So as a player, how would you describe yourself? Maybe another archetype that I didn't cite, but how would you say, what kind of player are you?
I'm definitely, I think, the player that plays for the challenge of playing a game. You know, I use gaming as a way of a cerebral release, almost
Yeah.
like a way that I can kind of just delve into something creatively that's not just work or something I do on my day to day. I do like to win though, but it's not my primary goal. You know, I never aspired to be a professional player in any card game. I used to play Magic the Gathering before
Mm.
this, never tried to be a pro, but my win rates were always pretty good. I like winning, but I also like the competitive aspect and the creative aspect that card games pose.
Even the deck building, you take it as a challenge too.
Yeah, for sure. Deck building is, in my opinion, a creative outlet, and it's something that I'm excited to see Flesh and Blood grow in. Because right now, we're still in the relatively early
Yeah.
years of Flesh and Blood. So, right now, your options for deck building are more restricted to the class types, right? Within the class type, there's only so much room that you can kind of express yourself, and I hope to see more of that as more expansion sets come out. We have Dynasty coming out in less than 3 4 weeks, and I really hope for growth in that area in this game.
Okay, cool. Well, let's get to the questionnaire then, shall we? I don't know if you're familiar with the Proust questionnaire, but actually I sent you a link to show you what it is, but it's basically, for the people who don't know, it's a set of questions that the French author Marcel Proust asked himself. He tried to answer them as poetically and with as much wit and humor as possible, and it became a tradition in France. Bernard Pivot, a famous French presenter, he used it in his TV show Bouillon de Culture, and James Lipton, I don't know if you've seen his show, it was called Inside the Actor Studio. He asked them to famous actors at the end of the show. So we adapted it to make it more relevant to Flesh and Blood players, and we'll see how it goes. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's get it
Okay,
done.
cool. What is, Tariq, your favorite virtue? The skill you have in the way you play and the one you value the most?
Probably honesty. Just not in just myself, but in others. I try and be honest with most things I do in life. Honesty over the board too. I'm not one to do people. If I make a mistake, I'll admit it. But I also won't hold people to their mistakes at times too. Like if they're honest that they meant to do one thing but they did another, I'll let them take it back, even at a higher level event
Okay,
like the
cool.
Pro Tour.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Somehow, I think maybe I cut you off, but if you want to go on, it's okay.
Nope, that
Okay.
adequately
Okay,
answers
cool.
it.
And what do you think is your main flaw as a player?
Obsessiveness, I definitely say. So one of my greatest strengths is also one of my greatest weaknesses. Sometimes I focus too much on a problem that I think can be solved, and I just need to let it go and understand and take my L's where they are.
Hmm. What's your ultimate goal in Flesh and Blood?
I don't really have one. I just want to kind of enjoy it as long as possible, and this extends more from Flesh and Blood just to everything, life and gaming in general, is that I only play something if I enjoy it, right? The moment I stop enjoying the game Flesh and Blood, I will stop playing the game of Flesh and Blood. So my ultimate goal is just to hopefully enjoy the game as long as possible, and I think the results will come naturally from that.
Hmm. And what's your biggest fear as a player?
Mm, I think every player has it on the back of their mind that something happens. Like with the judges or something,
Mm-hmm.
and a very innocuous situation gets turned into a misunderstanding that can then go further. I had one at the Battle Harden actually, where I was already eliminated from the tournament, and I didn't know that the silent stilettos on Dromai, you couldn't activate that if somebody Aether darted an
Yeah.
Ashwing on the attack layer, and I that interaction just never come up for me in testing because I never popped my Arcane Barrier to give my action point back, and the judges did an investigation, and I think they ultimately ruled that it was accidental, and I had no idea about that ruling. So stuff like that I think scares me the most as a player, my own ignorance getting turned against me as something more malicious than it actually is.
What's your favorite class or hero? And if it's a different one, if you were a character in Flesh and Blood, who would you be?
If I was a character in Flesh and Blood, who would I be?
It doesn't have to be a hero. You can be the guy in the background, like the kid who is always enthusiastic. I don't know, in Lexi, in young Lexi, the one who's always cheering for the people at the.
Probably Bravo. He looks like he's always having a good time and he's
He
like
does,
partying all
right?
the time.
Yeah.
So, and he's jacked. So if I was to be somebody, it'd probably be Bravo. My favorite hero to play or archetype has to be Ranger, though. I think the creative aspect of Ranger, Death Dealer, the mechanics of being able to shoot from the arsenal are really cool. So that has to be my favorite hero in terms of playing and casually loving.
Yeah, because competitively, it's not really an option, right?
Not yet.
You see, you have hopes for the Ranger class.
I do have hopes, yes.
Okay. So now we'll move on to more general questions about gaming to know more about you as a gamer because we know a lot about you about the Flesh and Blood player. But what's your favorite game of all time? Apart from Flesh
Uh,
and Blood, unless it's your absolute favorite game of all time.
Flesh and Blood is up there as one of my favorite TCGs of all time. My favorite game still has to be StarCraft 2. Um, it's just such a beautiful game. It's almost like art in some ways, especially if you understand it at like a
Yeah.
really, really high level, which I competed at for a couple of years. Like these little micro decisions that go even unnoticed by like the casters or community, just like make and dictate like the entire game. So I think that game is like art in motion, and that has to be my favorite game of all time.
And what's the game you played that you hated the most? The absolute worst game in your opinion among all those you've played?
Mm, it's hard to say because if I hate a game, I just probably won't play it again. I don't know. I gotta pass on this one because I don't really hate anything I
Yeah.
do.
Okay. And who's the professional player that you admire the most? It can be any game, absolutely any game. It can be poker, it can be magic, it can be gaming, in video gaming, it can be anything. Esports, I don't know. It
Yeah.
can be a sports player even if you feel like answering this way.
Probably the one that had the most influence on my life was like Jaedong and Flash and some of the StarCraft 2 pros from Korea back in the day. They really hammered home the fact that work ethic will take you way further than
Mm.
talent. So, it's something that dawned on me when I was an undergrad that even if you're gifted at something, you have to excuse my dogs, they're getting excited. Even if you're gifted at something, you still have to put hours and hours of work. And then even Flash ended up getting carpal tunnel because he practiced so much StarCraft 2. So definitely Jaedong or Flash would probably be my favorite esports or pro players of all time.
Mm. What's the play amongst all games once again that impressed you the most that you've been witness to?
Uh, uh,
Yeah.
the tough one off the top of my head. Um, hmm. I'm gonna have to say, I don't know. I'm gonna pass on that just because there's so many and I can't recall any of them at this time. I'm sure if you revisited that question in a week
Yeah.
and I had a little bit more time to think about it, but nothing's jumping in my head right
Yeah,
now. But
maybe
there's
I'll
just
try
so many.
to tweak this question because it's the one that people have the hardest time remembering, and sometimes you have lots of answers that come into your mind, but none that jump and make sure that you can express them in an impressive way. So yeah, okay. And what's the play you made? Maybe you'll remember this one. Maybe the play you made during your career as a player that you are the most proud of.
I don't know about the most proud of, but I think it's one of the funniest ones and probably the most memorable. It was in the top 8 of U.S. Nationals, and I think I was playing against Tyler Horspool in the Briar Mere. And just before that top 8, I played against Brendan Patrick from Arsenal Pass. We were kind of just playing mock games to get the matchup down,
Yeah.
and we talk about like purposely letting yourself go to one life because of Arcanite Skullcap back then. You want to turn off the arcane barrier so you can then pitch for a rune chant, starting with Rosetta Thorn for a lethal swing, and it plays around uh, the defense reaction that pings you for one from Runeblade. So I did that. I purposely like went to one life, and then like I pitched a blue made a rune chant, and then I did like finger guns to Brendan who's sitting on the side. And I think it might even be on camera. I have to go back and watch it, but it was definitely kind of bad mannered, and I feel bad. And Tyler knows. Hopefully, he knows it was all in good fun. But that's definitely the most memorable and probably the funniest thing I've done in TCGs.
Okay, nice. And now we are gonna finish with more personal questions. So once again, if you don't feel like answering, it's perfectly fine. But I don't think any of those are gonna make you uncomfortable. So what's your favorite nickname? The one that fits you the best, the one that people give you, and that fits you the best.
You know, I don't think anybody really gives me nicknames. I know people in my friend group just call me Doc or Doctor, Dr. Patel, and just because that's my profession.
You
That'd
feel
probably
it
be,
suits you.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it describes who I am, even though I think it's extremely pretentious, and I would never ever introduce myself as Dr. Patel. So, yeah.
So not really. So you don't really have one like a childhood nickname or something that's stuck with you for a long time.
No, I mean my name is already hard enough to pronounce as is, I think. So I think people just try their best to struggle to pronounce it. So, my lacrosse coach growing up used to call me Turok, like the dinosaur hunter, if you guys
Yeah,
remember
yeah,
the
yeah.
the game from the
Mm-hmm.
90s. So I think that would be the one I remember the most.
To rock dinosaur hunter, nice. Who's the person who means the most to you in your personal life?
Probably my girlfriend Amanda. She's awesome. She takes care of all of us, even like when we go and stay in like the Dragon Shield team house. She'll like cook for everybody. She's very selfless. So she's definitely the person that means the most to me in my life.
What's the most important work of art for you? It could be a movie, a painting, a sculpture, anything. It could be a video game, an opera, a record, anything really. The one that means the most to you.
I think music. I listen to a lot of music, and I have a pretty eclectic taste. Everything from like K-pop to classical to rock to rap. So there's no one work of art or music or really anything that obsesses me because I think diversity is healthy. And you know, when I get sick of one genre, I like another. So I couldn't tell you my favorite artist. I couldn't tell you my favorite song. But definitely music, I think, is what is most important to me.
Yeah, sometimes the only way to check the favorite music of someone who listens to a lot of music is to check their Spotify accounts or something and to check the sound they listen to the most. I mean, I wouldn't
Yeah.
like it if people watched mine because there are lots of things that I'd rather kept hidden, but it's always interesting to know what people listen to. And I think I've seen that you listen to a lot of music because when I see you on Discord, you're always on Spotify or something.
Yeah, there's always
So
music just playing in the
yeah,
background or in my headphones, no matter what I'm doing.
so maybe can you tell us more about one or two of your favorite artists?
Yeah, sure. So, Third Eye Blind is
Oh
probably
yeah.
one of my favorite bands of all time. In the Vein is one of my favorite albums, so I can like sit and listen to that like front to back over and over on repeat. Uh, they're probably my favorite alternative rock bands. I'm actually a huge Chainsmoker fan for like more like progressive house
Okay.
type pop music, so I love the Chainsmokers. Um, Classical music, I'm very much a Bach fan. Aria, uh, you know, all of his work is just like absolutely brilliant. Chopin as well, if I'm in the mood for
Okay.
piano.
That's a wide
Um,
range. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, gone forever. It all depends, right? Like, am I studying? Am I? I've always wanted to see Yuruma in person, actually, and I was actually gonna go, because I think he was in Toronto right before COVID hit, and then COVID happened, and I wasn't able to go
Yeah.
see him. But I do want to see Yuruma at some point as well. So.
Okay. Cool. What's the gift of nature that you would like to have that you don't already have, and that you'd love to have?
More energy. I like see people and like Rob, for example, my good friend Rob, Rob Seigel.
Yeah.
People in the Flushing Blood community might know him, but he's like the Energizer Bunny. Like we could be playing an entire day of Flesh and Blood or whatever, and he could just be like ready to go at night. And I'm not like that. Like when I'm drained, I can barely function as a sociable being. It takes a lot of energy just for me to be sociable. And you know, at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, I want to be left alone. I want to go to sleep. And I've always said to myself, I've always like lacked energy. You know, I've never had that ability to like go all night partying or drinking and then go to class the next day. So I don't know how people like that do it, and it'd be cool to have that supernatural energy.
Yeah, yeah. You actually feels when you see people with a lot of energy like a superpower. You're like, okay, you're a god. So it's we are reaching the last three questions, and they are probably I mean, maybe the most personal ones. So once again, if you don't feel like answering, it's perfectly okay. How would you like to die?
In my sleep at an old age. I was about to quote Tyrion Lannister, but I don't think that's PG appropriate. It's
Nah.
appropriate for this podcast. But yeah, I mean, you know, one of the interesting things about working in medicine is something I didn't quite realize when I was younger is that nobody dies of old age, right?
Yeah.
Like when we're younger and grandma passes away, you're like, oh, why did grandma die? And your mom and dad tell you, you know, oh, she was old or she was old age. So everybody dies of something, right? Whether it's going to be cancer, pneumonia, a UTI, a heart attack, a stroke, so whatever. Something will get you at the end of your life. So in my opinion, I think the most peaceful way to go, strictly from a medical point of view, I think would be like kidney failure or some sort of renal failure, because you kind of get like this ammonia buildup, and eventually you'll just kind of go to sleep and never wake up one day. I can tell you the worst way to die would probably be something like liver failure. So
Yeah. Maybe not for this one. Okay. Maybe another interview sometime. And that's That's my favorite question. So it's let's I'll take the time to tell it and to ask it in the as perfect as possible way. The first one, the last two questions that are the ones I love the most, and the first one was invented by Bernard Pivot, which I talked about earlier, and he tells it like that: you just died and you arrive at the pearly gates or heaven or whatever, some kind of afterlife. We can call it any kind of name that makes sense to you or your faith. I don't know if you believe in a kind of afterlife, but in this story, God greets you in the afterlife. What do you think he'll say to you?
Did you have fun?
Just ask you
That's it.
this question like that. And what will you
Yeah.
say?
I don't know. My stories are still being written, so I'm a big believer. So I'm not religious, which is funny because I think I come from a more religious family.
Mm-hmm.
They were kind of split. So my mom's side is actually Muslim and my father's side is actually Hindu. So I was raised with like a very dichotomous, a polar opposite kind of viewpoint growing up. But my view on the world is a little bit different. It's definitely more influenced, I think, about like from Eastern philosophy, where I think, you know, the whole world is self-conscious, right? The universe, we're just apertures of the universe. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
think about it, our body's made up of heavy elements that were once at the core of a star, right? Carbon, nitrogen, oxygen. These are all just a bunch of protons and neutrons and electrons kind of smashed together, from various helium and hydrogen atoms. So we were all, once this entire globe, every bad person, good person, evil person that you've ever known or heard of, every mythical creature or story or whatever, was all in the core, the nucleus of this tiny star, and now we just exist as these physical forms that are having these flesh and blood discussions. So for me, I think there's a certain aspect of God in everybody because we are simply the universe manifesting as itself. So I think God would greet me as a part of himself and asked if I had fun. I think it's just God playing games. And, if you were an omnipotent being, I think it would be quite boring. That's just my opinion.
Okay, perfect. And the very last question: if James White, another kind of god in a way, was in front of you and he had to give you an answer to one of your questions, what would you ask him?
Hmm. Yeah, to answer, if he could answer any
Yeah,
question.
he had to answer. He couldn't avoid it.
You know, I probably wouldn't ask him anything.
Just
I don't
talk.
think there's, yeah, no, because it's interesting. There's a mathematician, you might be familiar with him. His name was Kurt Gödel. He did a lot of work in pure math, and he was friends with Einstein, actually. And he came up with this, in my opinion, profound philosophy. It was for mathematics, but you could apply it to everything, where he talks about an incompleteness theorem. So for any set or any theory, I guess we'll speak colloquially here, it can neither be complete and consistent at the same time. So any system like that's whole, right? The problem with God is that it is a complete system, right? Like you always have an answer for why something happened. It's like, okay, because God did it. But then within that, there's a lot of inconsistencies. But you take the natural world, for example, that is very consistent, right? You do one thing one time, you're going to continue getting the same result time and time again, aka the scientific process. It is very consistent but is incomplete, right? There's always another level to it. We found the atom, oh that's it. Oh, we found the electron, oh that's it. We found quarks, oh that's it. Now we're finding string theory, and so forth and so forth. So there's no question I really have, because I think it would only lead to more questions at the end of it. And I'm hoping like once I get to heaven I could just like have an encyclopedia of everything I wanted to know. I could just look it up. But right now, there's no kind of burning desire questions that I have, because I think we're already kind of answering that. I guess I would ask him like how everything fits together, like the grand unified theory that Einstein was looking for. But I have a feeling that, and I think it's more and more accepted, that it probably just doesn't exist for the reasons I just talked about.
So it's really interesting, and your answer is perfect, of course. But I think you didn't understand the first part of my question, because I asked you what you would ask James White, the creator of
Oh,
Flesh and Blood.
James
But that's,
White. I
I
thought
mean,
you said
your
God. Oh
but
my
your answer
gosh.
is amazing. So I said, yeah, James White, another kind of god in a way, but it was a joke. But
Oh,
yeah, I think maybe my accent may. But your answer was so perfect that I don't know if you wanna ask another one. But the point of this question is that at some point I'm gonna do the questionnaire with James White, and I'll ask him all the questions that people that I interviewed asked him at the end of the interview. So yeah, that was another way of asking you to help me, asking you to give me a question to ask him.
okay. For James White though, my question would be, how come only 3 sets per year? How come we're not doing more draftable sets a year? Like
Like,
4, I think would be a sweet spot every 3 months.
like Magic every single day, another set that's
No, not
released. Or
not that frequent, but I think every 3 months would be a kind of a sweet spot for releasing draft sets and draftable sets too, not just expansions.
yeah, you don't really like the expansions and the ones that like Dynasty with no draft support.
I don't mind them. I feel like
If there were more
I mean,
draftable sets, it would be okay. Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
there's more engagement, right? There's more content from it. Players can engage and explore it for a longer period of time where um, an expansion set like Dynasty coming out will probably be done with it by Christmas, right? It's going to be out in November. By the time Christmas comes along, it's going to be a month and a half, and we're
Yeah.
probably going to have nothing to do between. I mean, it's the same thing that happened with Everfest, right? There's such a lull between Everfest and Uprising, and
Mhm.
I feel like that's going to happen again.
Okay, yeah, so that's absolutely an interesting question. Thank you so much, Tariq, for taking the time to answer all of these questions. So, where can we expect to see you in the next few weeks? I guess at Worlds, right?
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely be at Worlds. So I'm hanging out in here in Canada for the next couple of weeks until Worlds, and then I'll fly to San Jose, and that'll be the next event I participate in.
Okay, and then you're going to the testing house, I guess, with the other Dragon Shield guys.
Yeah, we haven't fully coordinated it yet, but once we do, yeah, we'll be there probably the week before.
Thank you so much. It was really interesting and really fun to have you here with us. And I guess I'll see you. I'll see you at the next Pro Tour big event in Europe. I hope you'll come by again. It was nice to see you in Lille, and I hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, of course. I loved Europe, and I can't wait to go back. So you'll definitely see me there.
Bye. Perfect. Thank you so much, and for the people at home, thank you for following us. And we'll see you next time with another questionnaire of Ophidia. Bye.
Au revoir.